All right, let's talk about one of the most confusing things in metal production, EQ. Seriously, should you be boosting? Should you be cutting? What's the deal with additive versus subtractive EQ? Well, today we're going to cut right through all that noise and get you some straight answers.
You've seen this a million times online, right? You're on some forum and someone goes, "Oh, this Grammy-winning engineer only uses subtractive EQ." It sounds super impressive, like some secret pro tip. But honestly, it's one of the biggest myths out there.
Is that the whole story? No way. Not even close. Believing one method is always better is like telling a painter they can only use shades of gray. You're just throwing away half your creative tools. So yeah, let's get into what's really going on. So here's what we're going to cover. We'll look at the whole EQ debate. Then, dive into subtractive EQ for fixing problems. We'll cover the search and destroy method. Then we'll get to the fun part, additive EQ for creating awesome tones. And finally, we'll pull it all together into a workflow you can actually use.
Okay, let's jump right in. The very first thing you need to do to get a handle on EQ is to completely forget about this idea that it's some kind of competition.
See, the myth is that it's additive versus subtractive. But the reality, it's about correction versus creation. It's not about the tool, it's about the job. Are you fixing something or are you building something? That's the real question.
So here's the new way to think about it, the framework we're going to use. You use subtractive EQ for correction. That's for fixing problems. And you use additive EQ for creation. That's for shaping the tone and adding all that cool character. One cleans the canvas, the other paints the picture. Simple as that.
All right, so if we're following that logic, what comes first? Correction, right? You got to take out the trash. Before you can make anything sound awesome, you have to make sure it doesn't sound, well, bad. And that's exactly what subtractive EQ is for.
And in a busy metal mix, you've basically got four main enemies on your hit list. You've got that painful ice pick harshness, you know the one, usually from guitars or cymbals. Then there's mud or boxiness, which just makes everything sound like it was recorded in a cardboard box. Honk is that nasty nasal sound that makes things sound congested. And finally, boominess, that low-end ringing that just sucks all the life and headroom out of your mix.
Okay, so we know what we're looking for, but how do we actually find these problem frequencies? Well, there's a classic surgical technique that pros use literally all the time.
It's a super simple four-step process. First, you boost. You take an EQ band, make it really narrow, and crank the gain. Step 2, you sweep it around. As you move it across the frequencies, you listen. And step 3, you find it. You'll hear one spot that sounds exceptionally terrible. That's your target. And finally, step 4, you cut. Just flip that boost into a cut, and boom, problem solved.
Now, the secret weapon here is something called the Q factor. All Q means is how wide or narrow your EQ move is. When we're doing this surgical stuff, we use a high Q. That gives us a super narrow, precise little scalpel to cut out the bad stuff without messing up all the good stuff right next to it.
It's also worth knowing there's a difference between painful frequencies and just annoying ones. That ice pick stuff, that literally hurts to listen to. You got to be aggressive and cut that stuff out. But the honk and mud, they're more just annoying. They rob your mix of clarity. You can usually be a little more subtle when you're dealing with them. Okay, we've taken out the trash. The mix is clean. The canvas is prepped. Now we get to have some fun. It's time for the creative part, using additive EQ to really build that huge, aggressive, powerful metal sound we're all after.
And let's just bust another myth right now. People say additive EQ adds something that isn't there. That's not really how it works. Its job is to enhance. You're not inventing frequencies, you're just finding the cool character that's already in the track and making it more awesome.
So with additive EQ, we stop thinking about numbers and start thinking about feelings, about concepts. We're not just boosting 5K, we're adding crack to the snare. We're not just boosting 4K, we're adding aggression and edge to the guitars. We're adding punch and sparkle. You see the difference?
And here's where we can translate those ideas into actual numbers you can use. You want that crack on the snare? You're probably going to find it somewhere between 5 and 8K. Need more aggressive edge on those guitars? Check out the zone between 4 and 8K. This is basically your cheat sheet for adding that impact.
So we have these two big ideas, correction and creation. The final step is putting them together into a simple workflow that you can use on every single mix to get great results. It's a super simple 3-step process. Number 1, correct first. Clean up all the mud and harshness with subtractive EQ. Get that clean canvas. Number 2, enhance second.
Now you can use those creative boosts to add the punch and aggression. And number 3, and this is the most important rule of all, always mix in context. Don't get stuck hitting that solo button. I mean, how many times have you dialed in the most amazing guitar tone ever in solo, and then you unsolo it, and it just vanishes? Yeah, that's why you have to make these decisions with everything playing. Every EQ move you make has to serve the song, not just one instrument by itself.
And really, here's the big takeaway. If you remember one thing, remember this. When you correct first, your creative boosts just work better. They have room to breathe, they sound clearer and way more powerful, because you're not just turning up the volume on problems you didn't fix. You're enhancing a clean, solid tone. So look, this whole framework, it's not meant to be a set of rigid rules. Think of it as a foundation. It's a starting point that lets you make smart, confident choices. So now that you know the rules, what's the first one you're going to go and break? Get creative with it. Happy mixing!